Mr. Secretary, good to see you. I'm going to start off with my home county, Erie County. Everybody here obviously knows that Erie County, or the Erie City School District, received a special appropriation of $14 million of reoccurring revenue. And part of them receiving that was for them to get a watch officer. That watch officer was former Secretary Zogby, and he has been removed. And I was wondering if you could tell me why he was been removed and if a replacement is coming.
I can't comment on personnel issues. However, we are expecting and we are moving to replace the position. So we do want to have a financial administrator on site to continue the work that Erie has been engaged in. In the meantime, we do have boots on the ground. We have a representative from PFM there full time, continuing the liaison between the department and the school district. And we're going to work with the General Assembly and the governor to make another recommendation to fill that position.
And when that position becomes filled, will that new person have the ability to write a new plan, or is the existing plan going to be, moved forward?
Yeah. So when the position, the plan that they are currently following is the approved plan. Mm-hmm. So there's an expectation that they're going to continue with that plan. However, I want to be fair in saying any financial administrator can amend a plan, but it would go through the same process. So not under the cover of night or anything, they would have to follow that same process. But our expectation is that we will replace a new financial administrator, and they're going to continue to follow the plan.
And just for clarification, what's the difference between watch and recovery?
So recovery, when you're a school district in watch, you are kind of looser oversight. Recovery is a little bit more defined in terms of the plan that you submit. And then the ultimate, plan within that is receivership, and that's when you have a court-appointed receiver. So watch, we provide some fiscal analysis. We go in and kind of do some higher-level accounting with them. When you're in recovery or receivership, it's a much more intensive plan.
But recovery is similar to watch, where the local school board isn't forced to follow. In other words, the school board still has their authority under both of those designations. Is that correct?
So it's almost like progressive planning. If you don't follow watch, then we'll go more aggressive recovery. Mm-hmm. And if you don't follow recovery, then ultimately you're in receivership, and that's mandated, court-appointed. School board only has the ability to increase taxes.
And so we anticipate that schools that go into watch will eventually come out of that.
Yes.
Because we do have a history of schools in receivership that don't come out. Is that correct?
We have a history where schools in receivership have not met the requirements to come out. We have some schools in recovery that are improving, and we've lessened their monitoring. I've not yet felt confident, either because of longitudinal accounting or whatever, feeling confident making a recommendation to fully pull them out. But some have are in the kind of in the process of loosening restrictions.
Thank you for that. On transportation funding, I just want to touch back on that for a second. So I think you said you're about $150 million short, so to speak, right? So we're going to have to back pay $150 million from the new appropriation that comes within this next budget.
Yes.
And you reiterated that we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And so why is the $150 million the magic number for the conversation? In other words, why didn't the conversation start sooner? Is it because the $150 million means that they're going to wait 3 months to get that money back, and we can't let them wait 6 months to get their money back? Obviously, if we're going to play that mental, we could do that throughout the entire budget. And of course, we all know that it's not new to budgeting. It's just not a good practice in budgeting. Generally, we budget money for the new fiscal year, not for the previous year. And so why is $150 million the magic number?
So we've raised this as a conversation ongoing. why the 100, well, the 150 million actually wasn't the magic number. It's a bit higher, which is the kind of like our significant caution number. It's when we would not have enough appropriations to make school districts whole in that upcoming year. So that's where I shared, next year it's going to be of
That's
of serious
500
concern.
million.
It's
That's
as
not
this- as
150
this
million,
number.
that's 500 million.
Right. So 150 came up because we shared the number, but our biggest concern is when we can't make them whole anymore.
So your biggest concern is when it reaches the 500 million.
Well, our biggest concern has been every year that we've been reporting, but the absolute siren goes off is when we can't make them whole.
NPRC was formed back in, I think, 2014. And back in 2014, Erie County was at the last minute included into the footprint of that new type of community college. And now, of course, in Erie County, we're dealing with the county submission to have their own standalone community college. And so we are going to have an evidentiary hearing in Erie. And my question is, first, is this the first time that this has happened? Has the department held other evidentiary hearings concerning any of the other existing community colleges?
As I know, the State Board of Education has not held any other evidentiary hearings as it relates to community colleges. And I think that's if you would allow me to provide a point of clarification, this is the State Board process. The Department of Ed is staff in this process, so to speak. So we don't, we support the process, but the State Board facilitates the process.
Okay. And lastly, just want to revisit the charter special education funding. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on Representative Delosier. So if I heard correctly, you don't have any physical data, okay, that supports that school districts are sending more educational dollars to the charter world that the charter world is not spending on those students. In other words, do we have a way to know if the money being shipped to the charters is actually being spent on the special education students? Or do we know from data there is excess money that is not being spent? Because it is formula driven. We're not a pay-as-you-go, it's a formula driven.
Yeah, yeah.
So do we have that data?
When we've identified, and I want to be really fair as I say this to all parties, public schools and charter schools, when we've identified the excess in terms of what we believe there's a payment of, it's not, and in no way were we indicting charter schools to say they're not spending that funding on those students. What we've said is that we've appropriated a special education funding formula to traditional schools. So you get the level. Level 1 students receive X, Level 2, Level 3, and Level 3B. However, charter schools still receive special education funding on the average student, which is higher for Level 1 and Level 2 students than what the new formula appropriation would be. And I think, to be fair to both parties, we've said the increase or the excess is just based on the formula. But I could, and I would never say that charter schools aren't spending those funds on the students who have special needs.
But we don't know either.
We don't know.
We don't track that.
We don't track that for traditional public schools or charter schools.
Do we track the actual services themselves? In other words, can you tell me that, that X amount of students are receiving speech therapy, X amount of students, do we track that?
The level of services, yes.
Yes, but not the cost of services.
Not the cost, nor whether or not anyone's going above and beyond.
And of course, the local school district has the ability to raise taxes and raise any shortfall that they have locally, where the charter world does not have that ability.
Correct. Now, we have said that many expenses, but as the traditional school districts and school boards have been reporting, their ability to generate enough revenue through taxes and their expenses is and even with in many cases with what we're providing them is has been offset. They haven't been able to generate enough revenue.
So should we be looking at collecting different data to be able to better quantify what those costs should be
Of the specific student programs,
of special education?
I think the work of the Special Education Commission, I think staying within those spans has provided a good accounting of what those costs would be. I think the work that we've done through the commission and the work that has been done independently provides a good band of cost associated. I think our level 1, level 2, and level 3 program cost, the way we account for them, is really good. Is a good representation of the cost of the program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.